Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 120 of spiritual healthcare. So welcome. It's good to see everyone, and I hope you all had an amazing week this week. It is eventful as always, as always. But there's been so many good things that have been happening in this week as well, which I think is really worth bringing up. Good morning to everyone. It's nice to see you. As I say, this is day 120, everybody. This is amazing. It's amazing. And today we've got like just one of the coolest topics, I think, is one of the coolest topics. We're going to be talking about the idea of not only near-death experiences, but the amazing Dr. Eben Alexander, as well as with his book, of course, Proof of Heaven, which became such a profoundly important and popular book in the world of paranormal research, as well as a really interesting question about paranormal teams and bringing people in from other paranormal teams. And the question for me really ends up speaking to this kind of isolation and everybody's cutting everybody else off issue that's going on within society right now. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm super excited. Good morning, Sally. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, everyone. I think today is going to be a really interesting discussion, and here we are, in the world where, of course, events and all of these things have been shutting down, and I think been cutting people off from not only each other but the arts, and there's this sort of mentality of isolation that's kind of developing out of this pandemic, and it's becoming really unhealthy. It's becoming a really unhealthy dynamic that people have got going on right now, with the elimination of so many important arts events and things like that. So lots of questions about that today, as well as I say, the idea of coma and near-death experiences, and as I say, the amazing work of Dr. Eben Alexander. If you guys have not read his book, Proof of Heaven, it's an incredible book. It's all about his near-death experience as a neurosurgeon. And it's absolutely fascinating. He's absolutely fascinating and extremely credible individual. So, so lots to talk about today, which was all stemming from a question that I got via email a few days ago. So lots to chat about today. So welcome, everyone. It's good to see you. Sally says she's on vacation. She's staying at home today. That's awesome. I think, there's a lot of people that are going to end up back at home again since the reopening of the schools and things like that. So everybody's trying to navigate all of this, right? Because everybody's got different rules. Everybody's, nothing's consistent. It's really, really hard right now, just trying to make sense of everything that's going on. So hopefully today we can at least tackle some really cool paranormal stuff, and I think this is going to be super fun. I'm really excited. So I wanted to dig into the first question. Let's see here. And so the first question came in from Eric, and I wanted to address this in a new way, because I know this has been controversial within paranormal groups, and I don't know why. I don't understand it. But the question is this: is it all right for other teams to recruit from other teams in the field, and if so, why? This is a stigma that I don't understand. I've run into this before, way back when I was a little more focused on investigations rather than the education side of things. And I always found this really, really weird, where other groups, as soon as you started to work with someone else, if they didn't believe that like something was going on, or so, like they didn't believe in your other team or whatever, I don't know, whatever the deal was. But they wouldn't allow you to work with other people. Like as soon as you're it's becoming an issue or a bother or anything like that, they start to lose it. So I don't really understand this. To me, I think we have to interlink and work with one another. I think one of the main problems, that I see coming out of the pandemic and the isolation, and things like that. One of the main issues that I'm seeing quite often, is the fact that because we are not interacting in the same way and in the same level, what I've noticed is that people are becoming more isolated within, not only within themselves physically, but within their ideals. And I think as researchers specifically, this can be such a detriment, okay? Because as soon as you've got something where people are beginning to isolate, where they have no other input, right? If they've got no other input that's coming in, then the only person that you have to bounce anything off of, any beliefs, any ideas, anything like that, the only person you've got somebody to bounce off of is you. And that's more beyond confirmation bias, isn't it? It really is beyond confirmation bias. So we have to be able to turn around and to be able to interact with other people and to be able to hear what other people have to say, especially when it comes to parapsychology and things like that. But also when it comes down to how the world is working and operating, we have to be able to be open to these brand new ideas and opinions and things like that. Even if they sound a little Looney Tune, we have to at least be able to weigh it carefully and have those interactions with other people. So, the question is it all right for other teams to recruit from other teams in the field? And if so, why? Yeah, absolutely. And I think it shouldn't be a matter of recruiting. This should be a matter of sharing and exchanging information on a level that is academically inclined. I think if we cut off information and resources, immediately we start to turn ourselves into this little island, right? And if we're an island, we've got nothing coming in, we've got nothing going out. We can't be doing that. That is not research. That's not research. That's not even weighing others, weighing other and more valuable opinions and research in the field. If we cut that off, we've got a problem. So, good morning to Janae and to Brandy. Nice to see you. Janae is saying spiritual healthcare is so amazing. I learned so much. Thank you. Thank you guys. Cause I say this all the time that I can't do this without you guys. And it really is true. I mean, if you guys weren't here, there'd be no point in doing this. So, I mean, I look forward every day, every Wednesday to this. It's good for me as it is for you guys. So I love it. And thank you guys, because you're the ones that make this, really, you're the ones that make this happen. So I think, when we branch into this idea of, isolation and things like that, there's a lot that comes with isolation in and of itself. And one of those things is shame. One of those things is, ignorance, tunnel vision, all sorts of things that grow and fester and manifest from being stuck with yourself, alone for with no other input. There's a life coach by the name of Mike Baer, and he said it so perfectly when he said, we cannot heal in isolation. And there is a time and a place for isolation. There really is. But we have to be able to have that other input coming in, because if we don't, we've got nothing to challenge those negative thoughts. We've got nothing to challenge those negative thoughts that come in, and as I say, we tend to believe ourselves. So this is the other catch. We tend to believe ourselves. When we experience something, whether it be something in life or whether it be a paranormal experience or something like that, and we don't seek that outside opinion, right? That outside weigh-in from the people that we know are going to be honest, the people we know we can trust with that experience or that story. Because like we talked about on day 119, you have to be very careful about who we tell our story to, right? We have to be very careful about that, because not everybody is deserving of that privilege to hear our story. So we have to be very careful about that. But, without that, we end up in a bit of a circle, because if we believe ourselves and we believe what we tell ourselves, and there's nobody that's coming in with any other input, then we end up with a problem of that can result in just, depression and upset and, telling ourselves something that just isn't true. So I think, do we want to be bringing in people from other areas, other academic areas, all of that kind of thing? 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So what I wanted to grab onto today, if those of you guys, if any of you have read this book, please, put your opinions in the comments. There's a fantastic book by a fellow by the name of Dr. Eben Alexander, and this amazing he was a neurosurgeon, and he ended up in a coma in 2008. Now, during his coma, he had an absolutely incredible paranormal experience that I think is worth talking about. And where this came from for me was a question that was sent in by Daniel, and he asked, I'm not sure if this is documented anywhere, but my strange question is this: can a person in a coma or other medical encumbrance communicate as a ghost? And I thought this was a really, really great question. And his question has two parts, but we'll grab onto this first. So throughout my time working, with the 3 seasons of Haunted Hospitals and 2 of Paranormal 911, the reports over and over and over again, not only through those shows, but just throughout history, of people who have had near-death experiences, or people who have witnessed the apparition of someone who is in a coma or had doesn't seem to be conscious, are actually pretty common. What I've noticed over the years, and 20 years that I've been doing this, is that, they seem to be able to, in some instances, leave their physical body, be wandering around hospital hallways, or visiting loved ones, and they always seem to definitely have a purpose and be far more conscious than they are sometimes when they're, laying in bed and ill and things like that. So there's been a lot of research that has gone into this sort of state of being, whether you call it a near-death experience or out-of-body experience. And over the years, and as I say, one of the most profound for me is the case of Dr. Eben Alexander. So, as I say, he wrote an amazing book called Proof of Heaven. And we've talked a lot about the idea of what sharing our experiences means. So for Eben Alexander to have gone into this coma, he had bacterial meningitis, and he went into this coma, and at that point, he didn't feel like he had a lot to live for to begin with. He was very depressed. He was an adopted child. He had gone to look for his biological parents. And when that didn't end very well, he had a major depression, and he could barely work. He was such a mess, an emotional mess. And because of that, he ends up contracting this horrible, this meningitis, and he falls into this coma. So the family at this point was literally willing to give up. It just didn't look like he was going to come out of it. And all of a sudden, it was upon that decision, when the family said, you know what, let's just pull the plug, his son comes running in and says, no, I'm not going to let this happen. Dad, you have to wake up. And it wasn't long, then he woke up. He opened his eyes. And after he came out of it, he looked at everybody and he said, all is well. All is well. And it took him a little while to come out of, what they call the ICU psychosis. And once he did, he said, I've got something to share with everybody. And he began to describe this profound experiences. He said his consciousness was completely clear. He said he just felt like a point of awareness, was the words that he used. And he said he was seeing not only light, but hearing this incredibly beautiful music, which he called the spinning melody. And he was seeing everything from just joyful people to beautiful places, and he described millions and millions of butterflies. He said they were all around. One in particular he called the girl on the butterfly wing, and the girl on the butterfly wing gave him a message that said, you are loved, you are cherished, you have nothing to fear, and you can do nothing wrong. And he ended up eventually, throughout this entire experience, going to something that he called the core, which was almost like a void, this kind of infinite void, but it was full of light. It was full of this most beautiful light. And he said he was given information that, not one universe exists, but just many universes exist, and there's more life and there's more to talk about. And since then, and during the experience, he was going back and forth from this kind of, small pointed eye view to this spinning melody, to this gateway, to this core, and all of these different things. It was just incredible. So he described this in a very interesting way, and I'm going to read this to you guys because I thought this was brilliant. He said, "Even though I'd forgotten my life down here, I'd remembered who I really and truly was out there. I was a citizen of a universe, staggering in its vastness and complexity, and ruled entirely by love. Ultimately, none of us are orphans. We are all in the position that I was, in that we all have other family, beings who are watching and looking out for us, beings we have momentarily forgotten, but who, when we open ourselves to their presence, are waiting to help us navigate us here and our time on earth. Each and every one of us is deeply known and cared for by something that cherishes us beyond any ability that we have to comprehend." So Eben Alexander, needless to say, came back with a pretty incredible message. And he has been doing workshops and lectures and all sorts of things since having this experience. This was a really big deal. But the other side to this was the fact that this is a neurosurgeon. This is someone who is, trained in the academic field. He had really no belief in this before he had this experience. And he was very much trained to think in the physical realm. And of course, so are the colleagues. So one of the things, especially when I'm working on things like haunted hospitals and things like that, and shows like that, is to understand that people's experiences, when they're coming to us with these experiences, especially in the medical field, it is so crucial and so important that we take these seriously, that we are, whether we believe them or not, to be able to hold space for these people that want to bring their story out into the open, because it often comes with a stigma. It comes with it can come with being fired. You can lose your job. There's a lot of things that people worry about that are going to happen. Maybe be looked poorly upon by their family, all sorts of things like that. So we have to be really careful. And I think, Eben Alexander is such a brilliant example of what Dr. Brene Brown calls daring greatly. And this whole idea that how we frame things, how we move through an experience like this, because he could have easily chosen to keep his mouth shut. He could have easily chosen to just put this under the rug, never talk about this again, and move on with his career as a neurosurgeon and just think this was all crazy. But he didn't. And he knew that there was something more to be talked about. And he was willing to put that on the line. My great-great-grandfather, Albert Durant Watson, went through something very similar, although he didn't have a near-death experience. But what happened with him was that he ended up, when he first came into the field of the paranormal, he was a very famous and well-to-do physician in Ontario, Albert Durant Watson. And he was at the time, this was at the beginning of things like the Society of Psychical Research was being developed, and the Society of Psychical Research was actually developed to debunk a lot of this stuff, because there were so many fake mediums at the time. There was so much going on, and he ended up having these amazing sittings with a fellow by the name of Louis Benjamin, and had a very, very similar message delivered, where this was, non-physical energy was really about love, that the paranormal was about joy and all of these things, and there was this darker side to it, but it was a very different message than what a lot of these sittings and things like that were being created for. Of course, it was being created for, scares and money making and all sorts of things like that. And he discovered something, of course, very different. He was ridiculed terribly in his career and his job, and nearly lost his career as a physician because he came out and said, look, like, you guys can take it or leave it, but here's what I've experienced. So I think it's such a profound thing. So is there this connection, as Daniel had asked, between, people, still being alive and having these non-physical experiences and, communicating and things like that? And yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. This happens often. There are lots of reports about this. And I think Eben Alexander's Proof of Heaven, his book, is one of those profound experiences that I think needs to be continuously studied, because it's just absolutely phenomenal. It's the coolest thing. Now, the other part to Daniel's question that I wanted to grab was, he was very curious as well. He said, I've examined possibilities of this. The idea, of course, that, these apparitions are showing up as, with the person still alive, but these apparitions are showing up, as the person is laying in the hospital bed. And he says, including an imposter type entity that might be aware of some aspects of this person and is bluffing or faking an appearance as another individual. What are your thoughts on this? So this is another aspect to it. And this is something I have run into as well, where you've got a situation where a negative entity or something like that is masquerading as somebody that or sounds like somebody that You'll hear the person's voice in the room, and it's not that person. And this is something that I have encountered throughout my years of research, where some of these negative entities will actually mimic or mirror voices, sights, sounds, people, all sorts of things. But they're usually not too hard to spot. And here's the reason why. When people are having these, encounters with, loved ones who've passed away and things like that, we often think in our heads that, oh my God, that would be a terrifying experience. I don't want to see somebody that I love come back from the dead. They think that's going to be something that's very frightening. And in fact, statistically, the people that have experienced it say that's not the case at all. It's a very happy experience. It's a very joyful experience. It's a life-changing experience. So that's probably one of the biggest indicators. And when people are experiencing something that is off, it is on the negative side of things, it is a bluff, you don't get those same reports. You just don't. And the activity that's going on in and around it usually starts to seem a little bit weird. It doesn't match up with somebody who is coming to, deliver a positive message or let you know that they're okay, and things like that. So there's a whole plethora of aspects to this that simply just wouldn't line up with somebody who's coming with the best intentions, right? So it's something to keep in mind. But yeah, do they happen? Do they come in? Or do they, can they bluff certain personas? Yeah, I've seen it. But the bluffs also, they usually don't last very long. So for example, you'll have somebody who is, say for example, hears say their dead husband's voice, right? Or something like that. They hear their dead husband's voice, but all the phenomenon that's going on in and around the home doesn't match up with what you would think someone would be delivering if they were being, if they were looking for contact or looking for a reconnection. The communication will tend to be kind of spotty. It tends to be, sort of almost like one-offs. Like the entity will mirror one person and then they'll hear the voice of somebody else and it will sound different. There's a bunch of different things that all add up to it. But yeah, it's not consistent. And when we get messages and things like that from our loved ones, I really believe we know, in the, gut core of our being, we know whether or not something's off. And there's a lot of cases, and I've run into this as well, where people have just been wanting to believe so badly. They've been wanting to believe that it's the loved one, but I think at the core of their being, if something's not right, we know. So I wanted to read a really, really great segment because we've talked about Eben Alexander from Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, because I think there's a brilliant passage in here that I think is in such great relation to the phenomenon that we've talked about this morning, and the ability, which I think is the bigger miracle, for people to come forward and be able to speak their truth about this stuff. And so I wanted to read this to you guys. This is really cool. Daring greatly is not about winning or losing. It's about courage. In a world where scarcity and shame dominate, feeling afraid has become second nature. Vulnerability is subversive, uncomfortable. It's even a little dangerous at times. And, without great question, putting ourselves out there means there's a far greater risk of feeling hurt. But, as I look back on my own life and what daring greatly has meant to me, I can honestly say that nothing is as uncomfortable, dangerous, and hurtful as believing that I am standing on the outside of my life looking in and wondering what it would be like if I had the courage to show up and let myself be seen. And of course, we all know the great quote from Roosevelt, where the daring greatly actually came from, which I'll read in a second. And she goes on to say, "So, Mr. Roosevelt, I think you nailed it. There really is no effort without error and shortcoming, and there really is no triumph without vulnerability. Now, when I read that quote, even when I'm feeling all kicked around, all I can think of is right on, dude." And the quote she's referring to, which I think is so profound, pull it up here for you guys because it is, I think it's absolutely amazing. And it's something to keep with you. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. I think it's just so profound. And I think, people like Eben Alexander who will come forward and be able to share these incredible experiences, and, all of our contributors on Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 911 are daring greatly, and they do it every day. They do it every day in their jobs, but it's another level to step forward and be able to personally relate an experience that could result in ostracism and people just ostracizing you in your job or something like that. But there's some things I think that just have to be spoken. And the quote that I guess it's a catchphrase really, which is you're only as sick as your secrets. And I think there's something to that. And the more that we put secrecy over top of experiences and paranormal experiences and spiritual experiences, the more we put secrecy, then the more within those stories, because it is something we add into those stories, the secrecy, the more shame can thrive and manifest within that space. And let me tell you, the one thing that shame cannot survive is the light of being witnessed. It can't survive it. It can't survive an empathetic ear or somebody who is ready to hear and listen with an open mind. It is the shame killer. It's a shame killer. So I think, by being in the shoes of one of these amazing people who've had something like this happen, and maybe it's you, to be able to come and speak that and put it on the line, and understand that, it's not the critic who counts. It really isn't the critic who counts. It's something so much more profound. And these stories touch people all over, just all over. I remember years ago, I was doing this workshop, and it wasn't a big workshop. There was like 30 people, and there was a couple who had come in, and they were sitting at the back, and they never said a thing. They just kind of sat there, and I wasn't even sure, like I wasn't sure what was going on. So I didn't even call on them for questions. I kind of just left them alone. And they sat in the back of the room, and they were dead quiet through the entire seminar. And of course, everybody's having conversations, and we're interacting and whatever, and they didn't say anything. And it wasn't until the very end of the seminar, so 3 hours later, because it was a long workshop, 3 hours later, they came up to me and said, and both of them had tears in their eyes, and they said, "We are so grateful that we came here tonight." And I said, "Well, I'm really glad, like, that's great." And they said, "Our son passed away just recently. He had committed suicide." And they said, "We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how to deal with that. And after coming here and experiencing this, we now know that everything is going to be okay." And it was probably one of the most profound moments in my entire career, because not only for them to have the courage to show up, but to then to be able to speak their story and express it and be working through what they were working through, during that time period. I really think that our stories teach, and, if we are able to have the courage to sit in the vulnerability and to share that, then we will teach a profound amount of knowledge that we don't even know we're sharing. We really don't. So, and they will pass that on, which is pretty cool. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for spiritual health care this morning. We can't go anywhere until we do our peace affirmations, because we got to go into our week with the right energy. So everybody take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. And this well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. At this moment, all is well, as Eben Alexander's spirits were saying. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. Thank you, guys. Thank you for another amazing Wednesday morning. I hope you guys are able to find a little bit more on Eben Alexander. I will post some videos of him, so you guys can listen to those and hear his story firsthand, because it's amazing. And I think it is so life-giving in a time like this, and it was so important. It's so important. Marge is saying this was needed. Yeah, absolutely. We have to know that. We have to know that we are by far not living in isolation. We're not living in isolation. Even though it seems that way sometimes. And I think the more that we are connecting and reaching out and doing what we're doing, the more we will end that mindset that's being so ingrained into our culture right now. I think it's super important to be able to let go of fear, be safe, walk through the world in confidence. I think it's a good time. It's a good time to remember who we are. So anyway, we got you guys. All the other classes, of course, are on entityseeker.ca as well as youtube.com/entityseeker. This will be uploaded there as well. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.